Good morning, everybody. I'm Ed Avis. I'm the publisher of El Restaurante magazine, and I welcome you to our webinar today, Maximizing Happy Hour Profits. This is an important topic for a lot of restaurants, and I'm confident that you will learn a lot from our panel today. Before I introduce our panel, I want to remind people that you can ask questions. And we encourage questions. This is your opportunity to ask the experts. You can ask questions using the Q&A tab on your screen. And you can put those questions to us anytime. You don't need to wait until the end. Go ahead and ask them, and if we can squeeze them in right then, we will, or we'll wait until an opening. Si quieres hacer una pregunta en español, no hay problema. Also, this event is being recorded, so we will put it on our website later. So if you want to watch it again or have somebody else in your restaurant watch it, of course, you are welcome to do that. And we'll send you an email when it's been posted. Okay, let me just show you a couple slides that that present some data from a survey that we did. We asked our readers about happy hour and how many of them did it, and then we asked, what kind of specials do you offer on happy hour? What makes it happy? And as you can see, the old-fashioned 2-for-1 drink specials, almost nobody offers that. And a lot of municipal laws changed 10 or 15 years ago to prevent that. So that's not a surprise. But specially priced drinks, of course, that's what nearly everyone offers during happy hour. Special food, about half of our readers said they offer food specials, and only about 10% offer some kind of entertainment during happy hour. And the only other slide I wanted to show you from this survey is regarding alcohol sales and profit. Obviously, alcohol sales are very important for bars and restaurants. This particular data point shows you that for bars and restaurants that serve alcohol, their sales, about 35%, come from alcohol, and their profit is about 39%. So alcohol is a little more profitable than food. And the last little housekeeping thing I want to say is we've got a special digital supplement on cocktail success coming out next week. So please stay tuned for that. Okay, and with that, now I'm going to introduce our panelists. Israel Sanchez is the owner of Cesar's, a family-owned Mexican restaurant located in the Lakeview neighborhood of Chicago. Cesar's has been in business for over 21 years. And they are, of course, getting ready for Cinco de Mayo tomorrow. But it's a fun place to be every day of the year. So welcome, Israel. Brian Masilionis is the Senior Director, Customer Development, National Accounts on Premise for Southern Glazers, the largest wine and spirits distributor in the United States. And Brian and I chatted for a few minutes before today's event, and he explained how important tequila is, of course, to Mexican restaurants, and how even higher quality tequilas are becoming more and more important. So keep that in mind for your bars and restaurants. Okay, I've got a set of questions that I'm going to present to the panelists. And of course, like I said, if you have a question, attendees, go ahead and put it out there anytime. My first question is for Israel. Israel, how important is happy hour in your restaurant, and has it recovered since COVID?
Good morning. During and before COVID, things obviously had to pivot in different directions, because if you didn't pivot, you were left behind. Unfortunately, we saw a lot of restaurants, and specifically in our area, that weren't able to make those changes. And because of that, some of them were not able to survive. But happy hour, in the state of Illinois, we have lots of different rules that apply to us. We have a 15-hour maximum that we can use a happy hour. So we have to be very strategic in how we offer these either drinks or food specials. So, again, we have to be very conscious of the laws. We have to be conscious of being responsible as a restaurant. A lot of times people think, Mexican restaurant, let's go and for all intents and purposes, make it a spring break kind of night and, not be responsible. So we want everyone to come here and be responsible. So that's our main goal. So within saying all that, one of the things that we have done recently is we've tried two things. One is direct email blast to specific groups that have either added themselves to a list. So we have a general e-blast that has maybe about 15,000 people, but not everyone's interested in happy hour, right? So you have people that have kids, so they're probably not interested in happy hour. Although I'd be okay with a happy hour with my kids, right?
Me too.
But this happy hour is strategically targeted towards people that have opted in, so that they're looking for specific deals per se. So we don't like to go with the social media end of things, because I think if we use that approach, it's just a general the general consumer, and then you're not specifically rewarding the loyal customer. So that's kind of the angle that we've taken. So I'm not sure if that's going to be the general rule that everyone uses, but that's what's worked for us. Just because, one, we don't want it to be abused. A long time ago, I remember my mom would sit at the kitchen table and cut coupons on Sundays, because that's what was the norm, right? Those days are long gone. Now we're trying to figure out what's the ROI, what's the way to target specific groups. And we've seen that this specific marketing tactic has worked to benefit, because not only are you rewarding the local or just the frequent Cesar's patron, you're targeting that group very specific. Because if you go the other way, which is a general approach where you e-blast people, one, e-blasts aren't as successful anymore. So you have to be very careful on how you send that out, because I'm guilty, because I know that I see emails coming in and I delete. But if it's something that I've opted in for, there's a higher probability of me opening and trying to redeem that. So that's kind of the approach that we've taken. Again, there's a lot of laws, and I know every municipality is different, but one is always being responsible, and two, staying within, what we like to consider profitable, because at the end of the day, that's why we're here.
Mm-hmm. Now, Israel, when you say that the state requires or limits you to 15 hours a week, do you mean that's 15? So that could be like 5 happy hours of 3 hours each, right? Am I understanding that correctly? Okay.
Correct.
And then
Correct.
how are they defining what a happy hour is? I mean, what is the characteristic that's?
Yeah, so you can't do like you said, the 2-for-1 specials. You can't. There's a certain percentage that you can discount. You can't go beyond. I think it's 50% of whatever cost. And then they actually just implemented a new rule to add to all the other rules, where there is a ounce percentage that you cannot exceed. So like, suppose we just launched, we call it a super mega margarita, and it's about, we'll say 70 ounces. So we can't discount that more than the certain percentage that the state has allowed us to, because believe you, it's one of those random task force that show up and say, hey, you know what, we saw this post, and here's a citation. So we have to be very careful with that. Yeah.
Wow, that must be a lot of work to keep up with all those rules.
Oh
Huh?
gosh, yeah.
Yeah, it is, but if you're just aware of what you're doing before you do it, then you're not going to get yourself into a jam. Again, as a father, as a restaurateur, the first goal is always be responsible and ensure everyone's safety. We are Most of the traffic that we have here is local, so we don't even have a parking lot. It's it's a brick and mortar where either people walk here or they Uber here, which kind of takes that element out of the drunk driving aspect of it. But still, we have to be responsible. That's our top priority.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Brian, from your perspective, seeing many Mexican restaurants in your work, how
Mhm.
important is happy hour in a Mexican restaurant these days?
Well, like so many things in this business, it really depends. I think from an operator's perspective, and I'm speaking for you, Israel, a little bit. Hold on. If your business is cranking and you're already at capacity, and you're doing just so good. Like I led an innovation tour for our company called the Liquid Insights Tour that you can see at southernglazers.com. And all the trend forward new places that were packed all the time, most of them didn't have a happy hour, right? But places that maybe I think right now, traffic isn't quite back to where it was in 2019. People are trading up and the dollars are kind of making up the difference, but traffic's not quite there yet. However, for younger people, traffic is higher for things like happy hour. So I think, and also it's like almost 80% of people are saying, this is from Technomic, that they're concerned that either concerned or very concerned about their finances or their spending heading into this year. So even more so than previous years, I think, the consumers changed. So they may be looking, or they say they're looking for more deals than maybe they were before. So if you're in a position where you do want to source traffic or steal traffic for your competition, and you really want to deliver for your guests, happy hour is a great lever to pull, right? Because if they're looking to go out and enjoy Israel's restaurant, but maybe like, oh, I can't go there quite as much as I wanted to in the past, but man, I can go and have a couple appetizers and a couple killer drinks, and I'm still experiencing my favorite restaurant. Then that's a way to get that traffic back a little bit. So I think for those situations, it's incredibly important. It remains to be seen how the economic uncertainty is going to continue throughout the year. But for right now, happy hour definitely seems like a very relevant thing to do.
Okay, thank you. And Brian, in your experience recently, are restaurants offering happy hour, 5 days a week, 2 days a week? What seems to be the most common?
We usually see it, like 5 days a week, usually I see it a lot Monday through Thursday. A lot of times restaurants stay away from Friday, Saturday, Sunday because they're already pretty good capacity.
Okay.
There's a study that Data Central, this company we work with, they did a survey, and of course, in Israel, you'll probably recognize this. Consumers want it all, right? So when you ask them, hey, when do you want happy hour? They're like, I want it Friday and I want it Saturday. And operators are like, I can't do it on Saturday. You're going to kill me, right? But so like, what was it? I think it's like 70% of people, when asked, hey, when would you like to go to happy hour? Like on Monday it was like 20%, but 70% want it on Saturday. But a good chunk, 70% wanted to do it on Friday, with like 60% on Saturday. Well, that's kind of a problem for operators. However, for those restaurants, like I said, I mostly see Monday through Thursday. If you don't currently do a happy hour today, I look at, that interest in Friday as a way to kick off the weekend. If an operator is strategic about it and they want to start doing a happy hour and they're around a business district or like a neighborhood, that might be a way to get into it, because people are like, oh, man, I just got off work. It's been a tough week. I want to go out and enjoy some stuff with my friends. Maybe stick around later and enjoy some food, because about 50% of people, Data Central said from their survey, said that people stay after happy hour, at least for a while. And that gives you the opportunity to get them to order a full entree, maybe another non-alcoholic drink to tack on some more profit, and just really have the guests enjoy more time in your restaurant. So yeah, so that's
Right.
kind of what we're seeing.
I interviewed a restaurant owner the other day who told me happy hour is good for him because it fills in sometimes earlier in the week when he wasn't so busy. So that is an incentive. Now, Israel, what days do you have happy hour there?
Monday through Thursday. He hit it right on the head.
Okay.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we're at capacity. So the last thing you want to do is shoot yourself in the foot.
Right.
People already. It's funny because with it being Cinco de Mayo, we get that call. I mean, the phone is literally off the hook, asking what are your specials? What are your specials? Well, the point that I always like to reference to, and I share with my friends, not with everyone, right? So when we have a big snowstorm here in Chicago, does Home Depot put the snowblowers on sale?
No.
So it doesn't make sense for us to put our product quote unquote on sale, because that's kind of, again, shooting yourself in the foot. People are already coming. And actually on those days, I like to do less in terms of just trying to do things for turnover. So I work on that end of things so that we're turning tables over. I love to have people here, but every table is real estate. And so I look at it as a dollar value. And so, yeah, I don't mind you hanging out, but we need to make sure that other people are enjoying Cesar. So let's turn the table over. So yeah, to answer your question, Monday through Thursday, typically it's only about a 3-hour time span. And it goes hand in hand with food. So it's either a free appetizer, a discounted appetizer with some drinks.
Got it. Got it. Now, regarding turnover, how do you encourage turnover?
Oh, that's the beauty of COVID. That's if, we always try to look at the bright side. I coach, I've been coaching my kids in pretty much every sport for a while. And I like to be the optimistic coach. And so during COVID, we implemented a 90-minute rule, as a lot of restaurants have done, even finer restaurants. So we really do impose it. It's a 90-minute rule. It's worked out great. So about 15 minutes before the 90 minutes is up, the server is responsible for, approaching the table and saying, hey guys, you know what? We're coming up on that 90 minutes. You don't have to leave, but if you'd like to order another margarita, you can always take it to go. And that helps us out a lot. So then people are like, oh, okay, I'll do that. And now you're basically covering both ends of it, because the customer doesn't seem like they're getting pushed out. They're actually getting taken care of. And if they're not interested in, another drink, can I offer you a dessert on the way out? And so there's different ways of approaching it, but the 90-minute rule and the big deal, we limit our tables to 6. So 6 taps is the way to go. It's created a faster kitchen flow. So if you suppose you do come in with a table of 12, what we'll do is we'll split you up and we'll have a 6 and 6, because it's from a kitchen standpoint, it's easier to handle a 6 top than it is a 12 top. I mean, it technically is the same thing, but you're splitting it up. Therefore, the drinks get there faster, the food gets there faster, and hence that table's turned over faster.
Great.
You're kind of you're forcing the pace a little bit, or breaking up the pace.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. And it's not like we're saying you have to leave, but it's a nice way of speeding things up.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Now, Israel, you mentioned food with drinks during happy hour. Are you discounting the drinks though too, or not? Or is it just a discounted appetizers?
You know what? We've seen that pairing the food with drinks, you don't necessarily have to discount the drinks. So we'll do like a free appetizer when you purchase 2 margaritas, and your profit margin should be pretty good, because the profit's going to be on the alcohol end of it, not the food end of it. So that's kind of how we approach it.
Got it. And are the apps that you're offering the same as are on your regular menu, or are they something special specifically for happy hour?
Oh no, they're the same ones. Because like we like to stay in a certain category in terms of we'll say traditional Mexican, but we throw in some trends. So we'll go with whatever the trend is of the moment. And so like right now, the trend is elotes, which is corn. And so there's a big profit margin on that. And so if you're able to do, as of late, we have a fiesta platter that is our spin on a queso dip, guacamole, and corn. So it gives the opportunity for the consumer to try out something that they maybe wouldn't order. And we've seen people come back and say, hey, you know what, last time I had that platter, can I get that? Now it's full price. So that's the approach.
Great.
Mhm.
Brian, from your perspective, what specials are restaurants offering at happy hour? Is it drink deals, or is it something like Israel mentioned, buy 2 drinks and get a free app?
That's actually, haven't seen that before, Israel. It's really interesting. It kind of reminds me of like tapas style. One time I was in Spain, you order a couple drinks and you get this delicious little snack, and you're like, is this free?
Right.
So when I was tapas restaurants started opening up in the 90s, and then I had to pay for the food, I'm like, wait a minute, I got 2 drinks. You should give this to me anyway. So that's what it reminded me of. That's a really cool strategy, Israel. What we see, yeah, go ahead.
No, it's funny you should say that, because that's where I got the idea from, not from Spain, but I got it from Mexico. So we were in Mexico City, and there was a restaurant. They were doing something a little bit more elaborate, but the gist of it was that we'll give you food as long as you're drinking.
Mhm.
And so, we have a certain amount of time that we can only offer this. So that's basically where it came from. So it's funny you should say that, the tapas place was offering free food, and yeah, that's
And
funny.
it's also a responsibility play too, right? If they're drinking, you need them to eat for responsibility.
So this is something my dad instilled in us long time ago when we first opened. If we saw someone that was hanging out, and this is obviously long time before COVID and the 90-minute rule. If we saw someone that was having too much of a good time, we would just throw we have a pizza. So the cost isn't much, but one, you're being responsible because you're providing something for them to eat. It slows them down, and all of the other benefits of doing that, right?
Yeah.
And you don't know how many times people would come back and say, hey man, thank you so much for helping me out that night, because I think I had a couple too many, and having that pizza was it hit the spot.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome that you bring that up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Around the country, though, I think we do see a combination of both drink and food offers during happy hour, just to really have the broadest appeal possible. There's surveys out there from Data Central. 60% of guests say they like kind of simple stair step pricing on drinks, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7. That's pretty popular right now. But like 57% say they like that same approach for food too. So that usually comes down to appetizers, sides, snacks, but generally easy to remember, food and drink options available at a good solid price. And then for beer, liquor, and wine, and mixed drinks. Once you get past mixed drinks and wine, their preference goes way down for things like shots. And I don't know if shots is a good strategic or responsible play during the day or a happy hour anyway, but the people want like a beer option, they want a wine option, they want a spirit option, and they want a cocktail option.
Yeah.
So the one big thing I've seen differently now post-COVID, and this may be kind of a waning thing, I'd be curious to hear your perspective, Israel. The days of, hey, we're just going to have the most inexpensive tequila possible, and that's going to be our happy hour feature. I'm going to have the most, lowest price possible, the lowest quality possible. Now people are like, you know what? I'm cool with paying a good price as long as it's good. It doesn't have to be the highest quality tequila, but it's got to be something I trust. It's got to be something I heard of and I know is good, right?
100%. The consumer is a lot smarter than people make them out to be.
Yeah.
And if you try to dumb it down, you're not doing yourselves any favor. Honestly, the appetite, no pun intended, for specifically the Mexican culture in terms of like, we'll speak to mezcal. you know, mezcal has taken on a world of, I mean, it's in a different world right now. It went from being that spirit that had the tequila, the worm in it that people thought was tequila, and it wasn't. And now it's become this full on, you know, you see these the Breaking Bad guys with those hombres,
Yeah.
you know, that they're on a whirlwind tour doing that. And it's just, you have to be aware that the consumer is a lot smarter. And if you cheapen the product or the offer, you're just making that value just diminish in terms of what you're trying to do, because you're not gonna trick the consumer. They're a lot smarter, and they'll call you out, and that's what you want. You know, you especially, I mean, if that's your thing, go for it, because there's definitely a market. Like you said, there's different demographics, different groups that you target. You know, like as of 2 weeks ago, we looked at our demographics, and we're 72% women, and we're in the 21 to 34 age range. So guess who we're targeting? We're targeting our ad and our Instagram and all, you know, so you have to be very careful in how you do that stuff, because yeah, people are smart. They're very smart. They will shop. They will shop it around for sure.
Now, Israel, how
Just
many?
on that,
Oh, go ahead.
just
Brian.
on that real quick, another part of that survey, like I think it came down to it's 70%. Yeah, over 70% of people say, you know, having a name brand is very important or slightly important as a feature at happy hour.
Oh yeah.
So even when we gave them, you know, they gave them the option, like, okay, we'll play that out. So if you're a guest and you could have a brand that you've heard of they used $5, it's still pretty inexpensive, versus a well brand for $2. It's like 60% wanted something they've heard of for $5 versus something they've never heard of for $2. Like, they want quality. So
Now, Israel, do you have a feeling for how many of your customers decide to get the higher level tequila, for example, like a Cadillac margarita versus the regular?
Yeah, you know what? I've seen it more in the tequila end of things, like the specific tequila. It's not in so much in the margaritas, because everyone knows like our margaritas are the way they are. So we use the same tequila for our margaritas all the time, which creates consistency and so on and so forth. So that's another conversation. But we offer flights, and so the flights is a really good way for people to learn about the product, taste, you know, different options that are out there. But the consumer already knows. They know what they're looking for. The tequila end of things, I mean, it's just skyrocketed. I mean, pre-COVID, we would order cases here and there. Now we're like every week we're ordering a list full of different tequila. It's not just one specific, because again, it's all marketing and people go with what they see on TV or in ads or whatever. But people are doing their research, and social media is a big component of why the education of tequila, of mezcal, has taken on a world of its own, because there's so many people, especially I follow a lot of people that are tequila connoisseurs, and they'll go to tequila distilleries. And I think because of that, the thirst, again, no pun intended, the thirst for knowledge, and trying different things out. And again, you know, I remember when we went down to Mexico and we purchased a barrel of tequila from Herradura, and we brought it back and we had dinners here. And I would have people come up to me and say, wow, this is more complex than I thought. You know, I remember one of my really good friends is like, the last experience I had was a bad experience in spring break when I was drinking Cuervo shots. Yep. And I was like, you probably drank a little too many. So that's a different conversation, right? But you know, the spirits have created a world of its own, and you know, we're here for it. We're here to educate. We're here to give give people what they're looking for.
Yeah. I like that you talked about the tasting approach. So one of the coolest things on that Liquid Insights tour we saw at a fine dining Oaxacan restaurant in Vegas on the Strip, they had a mezcal tasting it was in ceramic copitas, like 3 of them. They had sal de gusano, they had a blood orange and like something else. So it's like a taste and sip. And the copitas serve like it actually works because it shoots the mezcal on different parts of your palate.
Right.
So you taste the herbaceousness more. It's like, oh my God. And they did that as a thank you for arriving. Like, we had to pay for it, but he was like, I would love to have you try this. He was like, we just came out with it. It's really special. And it blew us away. And that was a great way to get people into mezcal because there were 3 different expressions. One was very herbaceous, not so smoky. The other one was very smoky, not so herbaceous. And the one was right in the middle, kind of sweet.
Yeah.
And it opened up my eyes and other people's eyes like, oh, it's not all the same. Like, no, that's why people like mezcal, because there's so many different options.
Yeah. Like you said, the different flavor profiles appeal to different people. Recently, I gave one of my buddies a very unique bottle that I got on a trip to Mexico. And he's just a Manhattan drinker. That's all he drinks. And I pair this instead of using what you use, add this. And he came back and he's like, wow. He's like, this is unbelievable. You know, and again, it's knowledge is power, and people are looking for just more, just different variations, but different options. Mezcal is, again, I can go on about that. And Oaxacan cuisine, the whole end of that, you see that in Mexico. You see it's taken that culinary experience to a different level. That's because it's very specific, and in terms of the mezcal end of it, it's very interesting, and I love it because it just gives more people more options to learn more, you know. And it's not about just taking a shot.
Yep. And Ed and I were talking about that a little bit before the webinar too, about especially within Mexican cuisine and cocktails. There's so many popular cocktails across the country that have great translations to Mexican restaurants. You know, you mentioned Manhattan. You know, again, I'll talk about that Liquid Insights tour again. One of the best old fashions I had on a tour was off the Strip in Vegas at a fine dining French restaurant that had a mezcal old fashioned served with chartreuse, a killer mezcal, and then they used Espelette pepper, which is a pepper from the south of France, north of Spain. And that was how they tied it into the French dynamic. But man, it was so good. Oh, they also had like they used an Espelette pepper, made a touch of simple syrup that sweetened it up. Fantastic. So that just shows you, like, we're kind of veering off the path for happy hour a little bit, but just shows how much creativity you can have with some of those base spirits and putting them in unique applications. I was telling Ed too before the call, you know, one of the best espresso martinis I've had in the last year, that's a whole phenomenon, used tequila. Fantastic. Fantastic. So a great translation to like a Mexican offering, where first time some people might go, what? And then they taste it and they're like, oh, that's good.
Yep.
Brian, let me ask a follow-up. You mentioned when we were talking about specials at happy hour, you mentioned stair step. Can you explain that?
Yeah, and this is kind of just a good pricing strategy in general for regular priced items, you know, giving consumers a place to explore. So having an entry price point, something in the middle, and then something a little higher.
Okay.
So I've seen restaurants do like a fried app and a smaller portion for $3, but then they have like, you know, a couple sliders for $5, right? So you give them a reason to trade up, and it gets them close to just saying, you know what, I changed my mind. I'm just going to get a full price entree. But that's what I mean, like having an entry point, and it could be $3, could be $5. If it's a fine dining restaurant, it could be $10. Depends. But, you know, giving them a range of options so they feel like they're not just being pigeonholed into one price tier. If that makes sense.
Understood. While we're talking about prices, let me go on to the next question. But first, let me remind attendees, if you have questions, use your questions tab. Now is your chance to ask them. Just fire them away. But Brian, explain the economics a little bit of of happy hour? How should a restaurant owner decide on the deals that they're making? And in general, should they expect to make the same, they're still going to make money on it, or are they hoping that the promotional value of happy hour is what pays for it?
I think at least, and I used to run a beverage business for a large national chain. So I was a consultant with a lot of our franchise partners, and a lot of it comes down to, when you think of price, you have to think of it in terms of not just the absolute price. It's what's the item, what's the experience, what's the quality divided by the price. So it's not just, hey, it's got to be $4. It's let's take a look at your concept. Let's take a look at how the food was priced, and let's pick the right pricing that is just a little bit better, or what you think your consumers would think. Man, that's an even better deal. Like the regular food is a good deal and drinks are a good deal. That's just a little bit better deal. It makes me, want to come back in. But from an economic standpoint, with the operators I used to work with, it was always just reminding them, hey, yeah, the cost percentage on some of your items at happy hour is going to be higher, but you're still getting a really good margin on that drink. And it's probably still a higher margin than you're getting, at least on a percentage basis, than you're getting on your food. So, and as long as you have the volume and you do a really good job trying to drive traffic, it's going to be a profitable proposition for you, unless you just completely lowball the pricing. And in some cases, laws prevent you from doing that, and it's not a responsible thing to do anyway. But just really have a taking a hard look of, okay, I'm going to use this tequila, I'm going to use these fresh squeezed juices and this thing. It's normal, that kind of normal drink is like this. Maybe I just shave off a couple bucks and I'm still doing good. But it's getting somebody in at a time that on a Tuesday where typically we're not very busy. So it's all about kind of maximizing capacity, and that's just again one lever of the food and beverage offers to kind of get people to come back in.
And Brian, any feeling for, and we touched on this before, but how many people stay after happy hour and then buy dinner or otherwise pay full price once the time ends?
Yeah, this again from Data Central, they showed about 60% of people say they stay a little bit after happy hour when they come in. And that may just be to close out their order, honestly, or maybe to stick around and have, a full price entree or full price appetizer. But I think that's one of the key benefits, or one of the benefits of happy hour is you may get somebody that hasn't been to your restaurant recently or ever. They came in for happy hour and they're like, oh my God, this is really good. I got to come back here for dinner on Saturday. Or, so you may, especially younger consumers that are more interested in happy hour and maybe more value focused, you might be able to get more new people into your concept by using happy hour as a way to do that. The key thing that I always, again, back in my large chain days, and I learned this from operators that I partnered with, the key counsel they always gave me for the top performers were, look, we got to keep the offer simple. It's got to be easy to understand. We got to work really hard to communicate it. And the third part is we got to be patient. Like sometimes it takes time for consumers to change their habits. Don't change the offer all, over and over. Like let it settle, talk about it, get people in there, get them to talk about their friends. And that'll work long term, but versus just putting an offer out there, not communicating it very well. And Israel gave some really good strategic targeted ways to do it, but work on being patient, because sometimes it'll take a while. And then once it starts going and people start talking, you're like, oh, here we go. That took longer than I thought, but dude, this is looking good. So, and the other thing from a pricing standpoint, you talked about the economics. One of my favorite places in Kansas City, it's a kind of a polished, casual, farm to table type of place. And it's got one of the more popular happy hours in town. And they have some of their more popular cocktails on their main menu. They just change out the spirit to be still a great spirit, but not quite as high end. And they charge like $2 less. And they do that for their like 2 or 3 of their top cocktails. They have a craft beer offer along with domestic beer. They've got a wine feature. The wine feature is not house wine. They pick a white or a red, something they need to move, right? If it's been open for a day or they want to, or it's new to the menu and they want to drive trial, they'll feature a white and a red, and that's a really nice wine, maybe a couple bucks less. And they have food options too that are really happy hour or appetizer related. And I'll tell you what, this place in particular, it's very hard to not get a full priced appetizer and entree. Probably like Israel's restaurant. Like when you're seeing all this other stuff going out, you're like, ooh, I was going to get this thing, but I'm going to get that because that looks and that smells fantastic. That drink looks, I'm going to get 2 drinks. I'm going to get one that I think they're getting me a good deal, and then I'm going to splurge on my second one, right? So that's why you don't want to, discount the house, even if legally you can. Give people some place to splurge if they want to, and you'll make even more money. But you got that lever of an entry price point that might get them in the door, and then you can work, on sharing all the other great things you have in your restaurants to get them to trade up.
Now, Brian, in this restaurant that you mentioned in Kansas City, when they swap out the spirit, is the drink named the same, or do they have a different name for it so people realize that it's a little bit different?
The same. The specific example I'll use, it's one of my favorite drinks. It's a black Manhattan that uses a Verna that makes it's an Amaro, but they changed the base bourbon from something that's probably about $45 a bottle to one that's still a great bourbon, but they pay about $25 a bottle for it. And that allows them to have a similar, arguably probably not the exact same flavor profile, not quite as good as their super premium, but pretty darn close. And they don't call it out. They just call out bourbon. They have to call a Verna because there's nothing else out there except for a Verna. But the bourbon, they just say bourbon. And then I asked the bartender, I'm like, so do you use the same one? He's like, no, dude, it's this. I'm like, oh, that's good too. He's like, exactly.
Mm-hmm. All right. Israel, how many people stay, do you think, after happy hour? And then, you've got the 90-minute limit, but some of them stay for dinner after anyways, or what do you think?
I think his number's right in terms of how many people hang out, but I think the more important number would be how many people come back. Because, one of the reasons that you do a happy hour is obviously to reward people, but at the same time, you want them to come back, and not just during that specific time. You want them to come back when, they have their family or when they're out with their friends. So you're always looking to make sure that whenever that customer's walking through the door, you're doing everything and possible to make sure that they come back. They're your customer. They're your customer. They've already walked in the door. They made the choice to be in your establishment. Now give them more reasons to come back, not to come back. So I think that's because, like he said, there's people that probably hang out because they need to close out their tab, and so that number might be skewed a little bit. But at the same time, I'd be interested to see how much more revenue they produce. From our end, it doesn't seem like there's a big number in terms of the people that hang out or spend more.
That might be
Hopefully
interesting.
they come back.
That might be interesting for your listeners, as they start a happy hour or change one. I wouldn't just look at the volume for the happy hour time period. I would look at your peak volume of dinner. Did your peak volume at dinner extend or expand? Is your peak a little bit earlier? Does it go a little bit later? And look at it in terms of how happy hour can also impact dinner in that way. When that chain that I worked for, we did a big late night, kind of like a reverse happy hour feature. And one of the key benefits, and I would tell operators, I'm like, what's changed with your business? Your late nights, doing pretty good. Your dinner's doing great because you're having people come in early for dinner and staying later because you're not putting up the chairs at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. So people are like, they finish their movie. Like, I'm still going to go in there because people are still hanging out, and they go have dinner at 10 o'clock.
Right.
Because the operators were like, so yeah, what's our top selling item, at late night? It's got to be half price appetizers, right? I'm like, no, it's actually a burger and steak. Those are our number one, number two. And they're like, what? I'm like, from a dollar standpoint, yes. People are coming in and having late dinners and having a cool appetizer and a cool cocktail. So
great.
I've seen that a couple times where, and I want to say it was more like a franchise that I didn't realize it was a franchise until I saw it in New York, but that's another story. They did a late night happy hour, which it started at 10 and went to midnight. And I was like, that's kind of a unique concept because, and the other thing is the menu options that they had shrunk. So their menu like went to almost half of what they were doing before. So yeah, I mean that's another opportunity to explore for those that haven't tried happy hour.
Yeah, I've seen that. I'm glad we brought this up because on that survey we talked about, so during the week, this whole idea of a reverse happy hour, the same offers, but at late night, 11% of people said they thought that was good during the week. It goes up to 19% on the weekend.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, you know what? I just, again, not to go back to a movie, I just finished a movie. We didn't have time to go have some food before. We're still hungry. Every place is closing down. Let's go there and have dinner at 9 or 10 o'clock. And the key thing too, and I remember this from my working with our operator, I learned so much from those folks, was you had a limited menu, so you can start shutting down parts of the kitchen, right? So you're optimizing, you're cutting people that need to go home, and you're scaling down what you need to do to execute good stuff for that time period.
Yeah, because that we haven't even really talked about, which is labor. Labor plays into a lot of this stuff. Deciding factors. When I'm looking at our payroll's like Monday morning, right? And so I'm looking at where was our labor at, and where can we cut that? Not because I'm trying to not have people here because I love them, right? But it'd be nicer not to have to pay extra people for more hours. Maybe crank out a little bit more on the alcohol end of it and have the kitchen shut down a little bit. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yep.
Brian, we had one question that I want to direct to you, and that is, what's the name of that restaurant in Kansas City?
It's called Rye Kansas City. I'm not supposed to say, but if I get asked a question, I'll go ahead and say.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Israel, do you, for your happy hour or for any of your cocktail service, get some promotional support or something from your distributor or other suppliers?
Pre-COVID, they would throw things at you. And now it's a different story. Now it's hard. It's a lot harder getting free POS. Even, this week leading up for Cinco de Mayo, I was on all my sales reps asking them for stuff, and it's hard. It's hard. I don't know if it's just because things are changing or still kind of post-COVID still evolving, or maybe the distributors have realized maybe we don't have to do that. Maybe we don't have to spend thousands of dollars on bar mats. Yeah, from that perspective, no, we really don't get any support from distributors.
Okay. Brian, can you add anything to that or on that topic?
Yeah, I mean, so our suppliers, might be interested in being involved in some program. We, as a company, we really are just about getting the right price to the right place, and making sure we execute as best as possible versus any sort of support. But I will tell you, and where we do come in, and what's really important with happy hours is if you are looking to change your happy hour or add one, just communicate. Because in some cases, if we're short on an item that you're going to put on promotion, if you give us some time, we'll make sure you're taken care of. But if it gets sprung and you're like, oh my God, why are they ordering all this product now? It's like, so I think that's what's more important versus, and I would look at it from our standpoint, support that way. Let's talk, let's continue to talk, let's continue to partner to figure out what you're pushing and then what we can do to make sure that your execution is as flawless as you want it to be for your guests.
If I can go back on that, you're right, Brian. The support that I have gotten has been the support that we plan out. So like if stuff that you're able to think about 2-3 months down the road, that's where you want to be, because if you, like exactly what you said, if you want to do it next week, it's not going to happen, just because from a logistical standpoint, things need to get printed, people need to design stuff, and that takes time. But if you're able to, think about a good happy hour, we're talking about happy hour, and how you want to do it. I know you guys are really good at that, where that service is offered, but you just have to give yourself time because you can't do it on the fly. You're right.
We're really good air traffic controllers with our supplier partners too. So if you want to do something, we can help, make sure that the suppliers are involved if they can be.
Yeah.
And we just help connect the dots there. And
Yeah.
and you guys can execute like you need to do. So
Great. One thing that Brian and I talked about briefly too was that his company has a lot of data and a lot of information. So if you have questions or if you're wondering things, that data might help you make those decisions.
mhm.
We've got just 9 minutes left. Let me just ask one last question of each. And attendees, again, now's your last chance. If you have something, fire it off. But I just want to ask each of you, and I'll start with Israel. What do you know now that you wish you had known back 20 years ago when you first started doing happy hours? Is there some piece of advice that you can give to a new starting restaurant owner?
Well, I think Brian stole my thunder earlier. Consumers are not dumb, and you need to make sure that your approach is smart and it's methodical. And obviously always looking at profit margins, right? Because that's why we do what we do. But yeah, I mean, I think we did a long time ago, and this is before, because for a while we have happy hour here in Illinois. It could be catastrophic if you take an approach where it's like, we'll say for all intents and purposes, buy one, get one free. There was an application. It starts with a G and ends with on. And they were offering special discounts, and they blew up, and it was great at the beginning. But then it just came back around, and it kind of took the shine away of what we were trying to do, and it lessened the product. And so for a little while we were trying to fix that, because our image was kind of like, oh, you're that place that uses that application. And we're like, well, yeah, but it's not because we're doing anything cheaper. It's because we want to attract more consumers. So we completely got away from that. So that's probably my biggest regret, because at first it was great because, they would pay us and we were very, very busy. But then the domino effect was, not only was it eating up at our cost because, we were paying for products, but then it diminished the quality of what we were trying to do. So we glad to say we survived that. But yeah, just be aware, be mindful of what you're doing when you're offering certain things, and make sure that it's not going to lessen the value, because sometimes people, there again, like Brian said, there's people that will go for that, but do you really want that consumer? Is that consumer going to come back? And again, that's where we were at. We want people to come back, not just for that, but for other opportunities.
Yeah.
Great.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Israel. And Brian, the last question to you, same thing. Any last bits of advice that we haven't talked about that you'd like to share?
Yeah, and again, from a distributor, this goes back to my past life working with phenomenal operator partners like Israel. If you look at a happy hour just from a standpoint of, I got to deliver great value and price, and that's part of it. That's probably the thing it's going to resonate with consumers. But the thing that's going to make them want to come back, and this is what makes operators' jobs so incredibly difficult. It's also about the experience. Like, how are you going to do things differently in the restaurant? Is the music going to be a little different in the bar versus the dining room? Is the lighting going to be different? Like, what are all the other things that when people come in for the offer, they're like, ooh, this feels good. I like this. So I think that's just one thing we really haven't talked about. And it's kind of out of my world, but it's something I learned over time. Like, you got to have the offer right, but everything else that makes operators job so terribly difficult is you got to do it. You're a service model and you're also a manufacturer at the same time. It's the only business like that. And that's why it's so freaking hard. But you get the offer right, but then you make sure all the other cool environmental things are in a good place so your guests can have a great time.
All right, great. And I think that speaks to the point of quality of food and everything, that
Yeah.
the people coming to your happy hour are not just one-timers, hopefully. If
Yeah.
you give them the full experience of your restaurant and what you can offer, then they'll come back or they'll be regulars. So great. Well, thank you so much, Israel and Brian, for your time today and the advice you've given. It's been fantastic. And attendees, I want to remind you that this has been recorded and we'll post it on the website so you can watch it again and share it with your friends. And that ends our webinar for today. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Israel.
Thanks, Brian.
Bye.